Spoštovane gledalke, spoštovani gledalci, dobrodošli v oddaji Intervju, kjer se pogovarjamo o pomembnih temah za našo domovino in verjeli ali ne, naša domovina je del globalnega sveta in tudi v tem trenutku poteka velik konflikt med Izraelom in teroristično organizacijo Hamas. Premirja se dogajajo, talci se izmenjujejo, pa vendarle je vseeno potrebno povedati, kako stvari stojijo. Da bomo bolje razumeli, kaj se dogaja, je z menoj danes Reinstein, ki je predsednik izraelskega odbora v Knesetu za odnose z krščanskimi zavezniki in pa seveda predsednik fundacije zaveznikov Izraela. Kot ste lahko videli včeraj oziroma pretekli teden, je bila ustanovljena v državnem zboru skupina prijateljev poslancev Izraela in ta fundacija, fundacija zaveznikov Izraela, predstavlja to skupino. Zdaj bom pa šel k našemu gostu. Josh, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be on the show.
Firstly, let's start with the Israel Allies Foundation Europe. You're the president. What is the purpose of this foundation? Because the most European countries and the most of the Caucasus are the supporters of Israel. So why make a special foundation?
Well, in 2004, we launched in Israel, in the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus. And the idea was to build direct lines of communication and cooperation with Christian leaders around the world. In 2006, Washington, D.C. decided to launch our first sister caucus, the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus. This was during the time of the Second Lebanese War, and they wanted to show solidarity. What happened since then is that countries all over the world, not just in Europe, but on 6 continents, started sister caucuses in different parliaments. Today we have 55, or tomorrow we'll have 55 caucuses around the world in 55 countries, and 1,500 legislators in our network that do what we call faith-based diplomacy, take their biblical support for Israel and turn it into real political action. And why do I say by tomorrow 55? The 55th caucus will be the Slovenian Parliamentary Israel Allies Caucus, which will be launched tomorrow.
What is the point of this foundation, Israel Allies Foundations? Is it two ways? So you do expect the support for Israel from these caucuses in our parliaments. What does Israel give?
Well, I think Israel has a lot to offer. You know, it is a two-way street. We want you to support us not just because it's good for Slovenia, but because we're the only free democracy in the Middle East. And there's blessings in supporting Israel. But also, on a practical point of view, we're a juggernaut in high-tech, in development, in everything from medicine to technology to agri-tech to cybersecurity to weaponry. And we're a strategic ally of the United States of America. I think now that the Trump administration is back, people know that, you know, it's America and Israel back together again. So you can be on the side of Iran and China or Israel and America, and countries need to pick. And I think that decision makes a huge difference.
Important thing that you said before, no. Why do they have to pick?
I think you need to understand that we're in a clash of civilizations. On the one hand, you have radical Islam. You have the people against freedom and democracy. On the other hand, you have people who support freedom, democracy, justice, and countries need to decide which side they're going to be on. If you're supporting terror, then you're not a valuable country or partner for Western democracies. And it's just that simple. And so people, I think generally, if they have the information, they know really what's going on, it's an easy decision. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of the information being clouded and not getting to the actual people, so people are getting confused. But I think that being on the side of good is always an admirable thing.
But you have to explain it for Slovenian public, because in Slovenia we have a big mental problem, let's say. We know that Yugoslavia helped Israel. We know that Slovenia helped Israel during tumultuous times. But still, when left says, look, Israel is killing babies in Gaza, we have a problem. We this kind of foundation and this kind of caucus, they can turn it into, look, they're supporting the mighty state that is killing children in Gaza, let's say, just because Slovenian opinion is very fluid.
Well, I think facts matter. On October 7th, terrorists came from Gaza and murdered 1,200 people. They were so excited about this that they used GoPros and filmed everything. So there's no debate. They sent it around. They decapitated babies. They put babies in ovens. They raped women. They mutilated their genitals. They tied families together, people living in their communities, and lit them on fire. This is not debatable. This happened. You can just watch it on the internet, unfortunately. They took Holocaust survivors and took them down to the dungeons and tunnels. Still today, a year and a half later, there's 59 Israelis being held against their will. They took an 8-month-old baby, they put him in as a hostage, took him into Gaza, and choked him to death. So I think that you can have a lot of spin, and there could be lies about what's happening. I know that the media here is taking the Hamas terror organization's numbers, which, by the way, they've changed. It's now, they're even admitting it wasn't true. But when you're on the side of someone who murders a baby with their bare hands, I think you need to re-understand what's going on. You got to look at what's really happening there.
Yeah, but we're still not in the point, despite our media, our television, that says from the day one, terrorist organization, right? Muslim terrorist organization for Hamas. Others are saying Islamist movement, I don't know, all the other words. Why is it important to say what it is? It's a terrorist organization. Why is it a terrorist organization?
Well, it's a horrible terrorist organization. It's not just a terrorist organization that attacks Israel. It's a terrorist organization that uses its own people as human shields. The people in Gaza are not free. They're not free to speak out against Hamas. They're being ruled by that terror organization. And Western countries, like Slovenia, unfortunately, is giving support to that terror organization. But again, just look at what they actually did. This is not secret information. This is very available. They went and they murdered babies, women, children, families, elderly, in front of the whole world. They were proud of it. They told people. What was our reaction? So it's true that your government, your media is putting out the lies of Hamas. They're using the Hamas propaganda and saying we're killing children and women. But the real truth is, and it's being studied at West Point, the officers' school in the United States, is that this is the most humanitarian response in an urban military conflict in the history of the world. In urban conflicts, you usually have 9 dead civilians for every military combatant killed, like in Fallujah, like what was happening in Iraq and Syria. In this conflict, there's been 1 civilian death for every combatant. We've gone beyond the pale to make sure it's not children. And so Hamas, a terror organization which is recognized by the EU and the US as a terror organization, puts out these fake numbers, and your media, your political leaders say those are the numbers. Now, in the last month, they've changed the numbers and said, actually, it wasn't that. They took 17,000 women and children off the list that died, some of them of cancer, some of them didn't die, some of them were dead before the conflict. But still, in the media here and your political, no one apologizes to Israel. Now, we're the only free democracy in the Middle East. We have rights for all of our civilians. 20% of our population is Muslim. They have the same rights as me, of anyone else in Israel. Free medical care, free education. They have a higher GDP than anywhere in the Muslim world. We're not a racist country. We want to live in peace. But if you come and you attack a country like that and go after its civilian population, there's going to be a response. And people in the free world should support it.
Well, the third or the second largest city in Israel, right, has a giant number of Muslim populations, right? The port city in the north. Haifa.
Well, 1/3 of Jerusalem is Muslim. And they have the same freedoms as everyone else. We're for freedom of religion. All religions have freedom and access under us. We're a free democracy. And free democracies need to support other free democracies. It's a moral impairment.
In your program, it states that you have a right to entirety of Jerusalem as a capital. And we know there's a Muslim quarter right now in Jerusalem. You just said everybody has a right to be here. Everybody has a right to worship their God. But still, the right to full Jerusalem might confound somebody.
So it's just to explain it. I'm not saying that the Jewish people are the only ones with the right. I'm saying Israel's capital, not Jewish capital. Israel's capital is Jerusalem. So I believe that the 20% of Israel that are Muslims, also that's their capital. They're Israelis. They're Israelis just like I'm Israeli. But you have to understand that no place in history has a connection to a people like Jerusalem does to the Jewish people. You can open up any Bible. The whole history is about our connection to Jerusalem. There's always been Jews in Jerusalem. And to say that every other country in the world can pick their capital, but the Jewish people can't, is anti-Semitism. And it's wrong. This is our capital. And you know what? There's never been another capital in Jerusalem. No one has ever had a capital there except for the Jewish people. So it's a no-brainer. This is our God-given right to our capital. And we will never divide it.
Well, that was the Christian kingdom, right?
But Jerusalem was not the capital when the Christian Crusaders came. They didn't make Jerusalem the capital. The Ottomans were there. They never made Jerusalem their capital. There was only a Jewish capital in Jerusalem since the time of King Solomon, all the way down to the Second Temple. It's been the capital of Israel. King David founded the capital of Jerusalem, of Israel. That's a historical fact.
Yeah, it is.
Can't
no
deny
doubt.
it.
But still, after the Titus, right, Roman Emperor, the Jews were resettled, let's say. Aelia Capitolina was established in place of Jerusalem, and then there was no Jerusalem for quite a long time, right?
Well, there were a small remnant that stayed in Jerusalem throughout the ages. But yes, this was a historical injustice. The indigenous people of Jerusalem were attacked and kicked out of their capital for 2,000 years. But every day, for 2,000 years, the Jewish people pray in the direction of Jerusalem. This morning when I prayed in the direction of Jerusalem. Every Jewish wedding for 2,000 years, we say, if I forget Jerusalem, may my right hand lose its cunning, may my tongue cling to his mouth. There was never a day that the Jewish people said, we give up on Jerusalem. And we came back and we reestablished our capital, and now it's going to be our capital forever. And that's what it says is going to happen in the Bible. If you read in the Torah, or the 5 books of Moses, or what you would call the Old Testament, Moses gave a speech on Mount Sinai and said that we will be kicked out of our capital, but one day we will come back and reestablish Israel. That's God's words. That was God's promise to our people. And that happened. So I don't see how anyone can say Jerusalem is not the Jewish capital, or the capital of Israel.
Well, you are quite special because you have the nationality and the religion as one, right?
Correct.
I'm a Slovenian and I'm a Catholic.
Yeah.
Somebody is American and he's a Christian, let's say. Somebody is Indian, but he's Hindu. Is faith and nationality so intertwined in Israel and for the Jews that this territory is absolutely necessary for future generations to become, I don't know, is this home for all the Jews in the world?
Absolutely. Israel is the Jewish homeland. It's the only one. Now, there are many countries that are Christian countries. There are many Muslim countries. Iran has a Muslim notation. India is a Hindu country. There are 22 Arab countries, many more Muslim countries. There are Christian countries all over the world. But there's only one Jewish country, one Jewish state, and that's Israel. And that is the homeland of the Jewish people. Now, that doesn't mean that others can't live there and be free and enjoy all the freedoms of it. Like I said, 20% of our population is Muslim, 2% is Christian. Everyone, there's Druze community, Bedouins, everyone has the freedom under the law. But it is a Jewish state. And the fact that we have one Jewish state is not a problem, it's the solution. Because when we didn't have a Jewish state, every country tried to kill us throughout the last 2,000 years. The Crusades, the Holocaust, the pogroms in Eastern Europe and in Russia. This was happening for thousands of years because we didn't have a Jewish state. But now we have our own state, our God-given state that God gave to us from the time of the Bible till today. An army that is run by the Jewish community that protects our country, and a government that is elected by the Jewish people. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this. Tough luck.
Well, yeah, tough luck, but still, isn't this a bit cocky, you know? You do have the United States on your side. We know that Arabs are dangerous, of course, Arab states are dangerous. They do have oil. They do have influence. Media is in the mostly for Arab states and for Muslim states. But still, you say tough luck, right? Does that mean that you are alone against the whole world?
Listen,
if needs be.
You have to understand this in historical context. Since 1850, there's been about 28,000 Jews killed in the land of Israel, in wars, in terror attacks. This is roughly 7 days at Auschwitz. This week is Holocaust Memorial Day. Next week is our Memorial Day for our fallen soldiers and terror victims, and then our Independence Day. It may look to the outside world that, wow, Israel's always under attack, it's very bad, but you have to understand that this is the best the Jewish people had in the last 2,000 years. Now, we believe in the Bible, and we believe in the God of Israel. And we don't think that is an embarrassing thing or something that's a hindrance to us. We're proud of it. And what you've seen since October 7th is that not only did Israel on October 7th go to war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Syria, Iraq, Iran, the head of the octopus, we also went to war against the international community. The ICC is trying to arrest our prime minister. The UN, even with our American friends in America, they were cutting off our weapons in the middle of a 7-front war. They were also saying a lot of the statistics about what's happening with Hamas and their lies. And we went to war against everyone, and we won. There is no Syria. Iran, the Ayatollahs are shaking in their boots. When are we going to attack their nuclear capabilities? Because we wiped out their air defenses. Hezbollah's gone. We've beaten down Hamas. The Houthis are being taken care of. The ICC that tried to arrest us is now being sanctioned by America. The UN, through UNRWA, who supported terror in Gaza, is now being defunded by countries around the world. And we have an American administration that is the most pro-Israel in the history between America and Israel. We don't think this all happened because this small Jewish people are great athletes or super geniuses that we were able to take over all these conflicts. The God of Israel, when we fight, goes before us. We see it. So yeah, I mean, it might be sounding cocky, but we're never going to be kicked out of Israel again. We're there to stay. And so that's why I say, anyone who doesn't like it, tough luck.
Well, does it do Israel good to be surrounded by unstable neighbors?
No, look, Israel's always been...
Because you said Syria is no more, Iraq is in pieces, Ayatollahs are shaking their boots, I don't know, Lebanon, let's not talk about it, right? Maybe only one that's a bit stable, now you have Saudi Arabia and Egypt, but still, usually countries are very happy if they have stable neighbors. Now you have a lot of unstable neighbors. Does that do you good?
So first of all, we've always been a beautiful house in a terrible neighborhood. We've never had stable neighbors, not since 1948 when we reestablished the State of Israel. The message is important. We were attacked on October 7th, and the world left us to die. You know, what did Slovenia do when we were attacked? Did they say, oh my gosh, terrorist hordes came in and killed babies and women, this is terrible? No, they said, we need a Palestinian state. They said, oh, the Israelis are killing babies in Gaza. Blood libel, complete blood libel. What everyone expected to happen was this is the end of Israel. We're going down. Everyone came against us again. Now there's no America to stand with us strong. The international community is siding. So what we did by turning the tables and fighting back and going for what our prime minister calls total victory sent a very strong statement to the world. We're not anyone's victims. We're not going back to Auschwitz. We're not going back to the Holocaust. You want to fight? We'll fight. But if you want to live in peace, we want to live in peace too. And that's the message.
Well, there's a correction, right? The only media in Slovenia that didn't do that, what you said, was our media. We condemned Hamas, we condemned Hezbollah. The first day we have a phrase, terrorist organization from day one, no Palestinian liberation, I don't know what, terrorist state. terrorist organization. We have on this television supported Israeli right to defend itself. And that's, I think, the most important thing here. And so not everybody is the same, right?
Absolutely.
We have our prime minister that was influenced by his, let's say, lover, right? He didn't care what's happening in the Middle East. And then events happened and he was like, yeah, let's put a Palestinian flag on our government, which was not really accepted, right? And they just declared the Palestine a state, right, unilaterally, without opposition and so on. But we always were on the side of Israel's right to defend itself. And this is in your program, right? The people who join, or the members of the parliaments who join the Israel Allies Foundation in Europe, there's something expected of them. But what if they're already doing it without any force?
Well, first of all, you said a lot, so I want to go back to the beginning. I want to say thank you for this station telling the truth. It's not too much to ask. You know, Hamas is a terror organization recognized by the EU. You guys are EU net members. So for you to say that they're a terror organization or that a country has the right to defend themselves from terror, I think that's the baseline. Unfortunately, the media, the mainstream media, and your government is not pro-Palestinian. They're not like supporting, you know, like they did before, a two-state solution that everyone lives in peace, or the Oslo Accords. They're pro-Hamas. They're parroting the lies of Hamas as news. They are supporting the establishment of a terror state in Israel as a reward for October 7th, not because of October 7th. They are trying to arrest the prime minister of the free elected democracy of Israel in the ICC and our defense minister for defending himself, not Hamas. They're not trying to arrest the heads of Hamas, the Israeli prime minister. So there's a big difference between being pro-Palestinian or being pro-peace and being pro-terror. And that's what we're seeing. Now, if you look at the people in our caucus, a lot of them are people of faith, just by chance. But we have a lot of friends around Europe. We have a lot of friends all over Europe. You know, and it's not a left and right issue. In Germany, the chancellor is from the left at the time. Now there's been elections. He stood with Israel. He came, he stalked out against the Hamas terror attacks. It was a good versus Israel issue, a good versus evil issue, not a, you know, whose side are you on? And unfortunately, there were countries that failed the test.
Yeah, but still, Germany is not the same as Slovenia, right? We really don't owe anybody anything. We also waited 1,000 years for our country, right? We were under the Bavarians, under the Franks, under the Napoleon, under the Italians, under the Austrians, under the Yugoslavia, for years on years on years, right? Our religious freedoms were also not allowed under the communism and so on. So, and we were also prosecuted, not in the same extent, but still prosecuted and conscripted into the armies that marched to Soviet Russia and so on, right? And then after the war, killed in massive massacres. So being here in Slovenia, it's a bit different story to convince the people. We are a skeptical nation, right? Yeah, those guys in the government, they can choose whatever flag they want, we don't care, right? But we as people are very skeptical of everything that is given. This is so-and-so, and you have to do it like that. And my question actually is, how do you convince Slovenian population, right? Because there's one giant elephant in the room. There was pagers, I believe, from Hezbollah that went boom, right? And it was a long-term planned Israeli operation. And then there was the most secure border between Israel and Gaza, and this breach happened. And there are a lot of people thinking that this breach was allowed.
Crazy.
Was it allowed?
Look, there's a lot of lunatics around that think that people are allowed. You know when people say that September 11th was a plan of the American government to allow, no one's allowing a country to massacre 1,200 women and children, the biggest genocide since the Holocaust, are allowing it. You can say that we were fools, that we disengaged from Gaza and gave it over to the Palestinian Authority, thinking there'd be peace, that we weren't tough enough, that we thought we lived in a, very fancy country so nothing can really hurt us. But to say that is allowed, I mean, that's just one of the crazy, that's like saying that there wasn't a Holocaust or that September 11th was a CIA operation. I mean, these things are just crazy conspiracy theories. Now, I love Slovenia. I love the people of Slovenia. I support them. You guys had a raw deal and you fought for freedom and you got it. And I think that's commendable. But I say because of that, you should stand with Israel. You know what it's like to have to deal with so much terror and communism and ideologies that take away your freedom. You should always be standing with the people of Israel who are in a free democracy. Can you imagine if we stood with the Soviet Union against the fall of the Soviet Union before the Berlin Wall fell? Then you could say, wow, Israel, why would you stand with a totalitarian regime that was against freedom? But that's what we're saying to you. We're the freedom. We're being attacked by radical Islam. We're not the big Goliath and they're the David. They have 22 Arab countries surrounding us. We have 15 million Jews in the whole world, 7.5 million in Israel. Our landmass compared to the Arab landmass is like a pack of matches on a football field. We're saying, let us have our little peace and live in peace. If the Arabs put down all their weapons tomorrow, there would be peace in the Middle East. Not one shot would be fired. And if the Jews put down their weapons, every Jew would be massacred the next day. And that's the reality, and that's the facts, and that's what people in Slovenia need to look and say, hey, I want to be on that side. I want to be on the side of freedom and democracy, just like Israel was on my side when I was struggling for freedom and democracy.
Well, to this point, I had to be tough because still we have to convince people that you have the answers to the questions, right? But now I will be a bit less tough because, in my humble opinion, of course, Hamas are terrorists, Hezbollah are terrorists. You have all the right to defend yourself, right? If the Ukraine has the right to defend against Russia, if all the countries in this world have the right to defend against aggressors, but there's a difference, right? Because when Russia attacks Ukraine, their goal is not to eradicate all the Ukrainians, kill all the Ukrainians and drive them to the sea, but that is the goal of your enemies.
Yeah.
Or the people who perceive you as an enemy. Right? So to tell the people in Slovenia, that's like the Croatia would have a party that would say, our goal is to eradicate all the Slovenians. And we would be like, oh, yes, of course, welcome, right? No, we would fight, right?
Of course, and it wasn't that we just went to war against Hamas. The next day, Hezbollah, the most feared terror organization on the planet, attacked us with missiles. Iran started getting weapons, and they planned this whole thing. The Houthis are still firing missiles at us. Syria started bringing in weapons into Lebanon. We went to war against hundreds of millions of people. We're a 10 million person population that's getting rockets daily. Yeah. So all we're doing is fighting for our survival. If they stop fighting tomorrow, there's no fight. If they release our hostages, there's no more fighting. Now, this is the first time in human history that someone kidnapped an 8-month-old baby, Kfir Bibas, and strangled him to death, and countries and people are supporting them. Do you know how crazy that is? Yeah, I'm sitting in my living room in Jerusalem watching the pro-Palestinian marches in Slovenia, a place that had to fight for their own freedom, supporting a terror organization, and I'm thinking, what happened here? How did this happen? Where did you guys go wrong? Everyone's got to think, well, what went wrong here? We misunderstood something.
That was my first thought, right? Because it was always, oh yes, the Israelis didn't have any casualty after the attack, but then they bombed Gaza. Well, yeah, you forget 8,000 rockets that if they would hit, there would be a lot of dead Jewish children
not only
and women,
that,
right?
We lost another 350 soldiers.
Right.
We didn't need to lose any soldiers. We have F-16s, F-35s, Apache helicopters, tanks. We don't have to lose any soldiers. We did it because we didn't want to hurt their civilians. They were using civilians in Gaza as human shields. We went in on the ground instead of bombing from the air to protect their civilians. And we were successful. As I mentioned, the most successful humanitarian urban warfare in human history.
Yeah,
and yet,
if people don't believe that, right, I would just show them Mariupol, right?
yeah, or Fallujah.
It doesn't exist, right?
Look,
it was
right now, America is hammering the Houthi terror organization. Have you heard of any casualty numbers?
No.
Have you heard of anything happening there? Does anyone care? No, it's only because it's Jews defending themselves that they're against them. In Syria, during Assad, 500,000 people died during the civil war there. More Palestinians died in Syria than in Israel in all its wars combined. Do you understand that? Is there any marches for the Palestinians who died in Syria? No. It's because they don't like Jews. I get it, but I'm not going to accept it. And I don't think that Slovenians should either.
I don't believe it's that simple, right? Because you said it's because they don't like Jews. I don't believe that the people actually don't like Jews. I believe that it's given to them by the media, by the propagandists, right? You have to hate somebody, why not hate the Jews, right? It's a 2,000-year-old tale that's just on repeat again, right?
Yeah.
But because when this thing started, right, it was Hamas slaughtering the children, raping the women, and so on, and it was terrible for one day. And when you responded, you were terrible for the all next days that followed, right? And I don't understand what's the point. America, you said, now supports Israel as never before, right? But American media, mainstream media, are the ones who said, look, there's Israel, they're killing, they're making a genocide, so the people went from 400,000 to 2 million. Well, genocide, right? In Gaza. Why do you think that international media is so against the Jewish state or Israel? Who's controlling them? Because most people say that you control everything.
Yeah, so again, that's another conspiracy theory that the Jews go. You have to understand the numbers. All right? It's a numbers game. First of all, there are a lot of truth and values-based media. Fox News is not telling the numbers from Hamas. We have news organizations like yourself that has been telling the truth since the beginning. So the truth is out there. But why are the mainstream media so against Israel? Well, there's only 15 million Jews in the world. That's it. 7.5 million of them live in Israel, the Jewish state. So when they say I'm not anti-Semitic, but I hate Israel, well, who do you think lives there? It's half the Jewish population. That's where we are, okay? But there's over 1 billion Muslims. There are 22 Arab countries voting in the UN, many more Muslim countries, 1 UN vote. The Muslims have the oil revenue. So economically, politically, it's never a good idea to side with Israel. That's why my organization exists, because it's only people who put values and beliefs ahead of economic and political concerns that will stand with Israel. Because to them, it's more important to be on the side of justice and democracy than on the side of money and power and oil. But most organizations, you watch CNBC or the BBC or the mainstream media here, what do they care about, a handful of Jews around the world? They have major contracts, they have support from Muslim community, they have advertising dollars that they need from Muslim-held organizations and countries. So they're not going to side with what's right, they're going to side with what helps their bottom line. And so that's why for us, we recognized in 2004 that it's Christians, not countries, that stand with Israel. Christians who believe in the Bible will always stand with Israel because God stands with Israel. And it's these Christians that are bringing the countries with them. The support of America is because the base of the Republican Party is Christian. The support of America is because the base of the Democratic Party is Jewish. So we have bipartisan support from America. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen around the world, but where it does happen, that's where you have support. And my organization coordinates that support in 55 countries around the world. And we hope that this will have an effect in Slovenia. You know, I don't get involved in internal politics. I don't know anything about internal politics in Slovenia. But I hope that in elections, your citizens will say, hey, I'm going to vote for someone who supports peace and prosperity and values and justice, and that you'll get elected officials, because at one time Slovenia was one of our greatest allies.
Well, our television was once wrongfully accused of denying the Holocaust, which was on some other television, but they said that we did it, right? Because they didn't even go that far to see that it was not us. But talking about Slovenia, we have in the law especially mentioned only the denial of Holocaust in our law, criminal code. In our criminal code, there's violence and so on, and Holocaust. So denying Holocaust is already an offense, criminal offense in Slovenia. We have put, even the leftists have put little squares on the streets, you know, you can fall over to remember the Jews. We have a thriving, I would say, Jewish community in Slovenia. Why do you think that in this country, right, you still need to work with the legislators to gain more support? Because I know hate goes up, goes down, people are manipulated, but still in our legislative framework, we do not condone attacks against Jewish community and Jews.
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, when it comes to, you know, Holocaust remembrance, the attacks on Jews, even on October 7th, you said, hey, the people were very appalled what happened in Israel. It's always consensus that they always support, you know, the victims of the Jewish people when we're victims. It's only when we fight back that they turn on us. And that's why it's important to say, hey, we're not going to be victims anymore. I appreciate all of the memorial of the Holocaust. But if you're supporting those who are trying to do the next Holocaust, it doesn't help me. And so why is it important to get the information out? Because they don't have the information. We have caucuses and we provide information about what's really going on. Fact-based information and education about the truth so that people can speak intelligently. Now look, you have a member of parliament in Slovenia. Israel's not in the top 10 issues on their list. I understand that. You have economic issues, you have your own social issues, you have your own policy. So it's not always that even if they are pro-Israel, they really know what's going on. They watch the news just like everyone else. So it's important for my organization to give them the truth so they can speak intelligently, so they can advocate for Israel. And then I believe that, and we're seeing this, it has a major effect on the political discourse. We're not a lobbying organization. We don't tell your legislators what to do. We just give them education and information and let them do what they want. And another thing that's important is that we have 21 Israel Allies caucuses in Europe, including the European Union. When it's just a few legislators in Slovenia, it's hard to make a point. But we're a network. We have hundreds of legislators across Europe. When you're a finger, it's hard, but when you're all the fingers together, you're a fist. So our legislators work together. They support each other. One of the first things our caucus in Hungary did 15 years ago was pass a legislation making it illegal to deny the Holocaust. This wasn't our initiative. They came together and said they want to do it. They translated that into Italian. Then the Italian parliament did it. Soon after, the Slovenian government heard about this. They started doing it. So these are things that are happening on its own, but through education, through information, and as a network, which I think is very important.
I'm sorry, this will be a little bit controversial, but I have to ask it. If it's known, if it's a historical fact, why does it have to be a law?
So, again, I don't decide what laws you guys put in your government. It's not our position to do it. But unfortunately, when it comes to the Holocaust, my grandparents were all survivors of the Holocaust. It's being distorted, and lies are put out, and some people are saying there wasn't a Holocaust. Some people are saying that this was done by Jews. It's a propaganda. It's the same thing, like you said, there are people who are saying that October 7th was an Israelis did it to themselves. Okay, so in past, you didn't need a law because you had the Holocaust survivors sitting there. You know, my grandfather had numbers on his arm because he was in Auschwitz, and he could tell you the story of what happened to him in Auschwitz. He could tell you the people who did it to him. But now, as time went on and they're dying out, people don't have those testimonies. So it's important that people understand by spreading this lie about the Jewish people and denying the single greatest genocide in the history of the world, you're purporting anti-Semitism. So I think it is a good law, but again, you know, there are a lot of countries that don't have that law. I don't think that they're wrong. I'm more concerned with the fact that your country is supporting a terror organization that kills little women, little girls and children and rapes women more than I'm impressed that you passed a law that made it illegal to deny the Holocaust.
One question. What's the difference, because you have here written reject forms of anti-Semitism and well, I forget now, anti-Zionism. What's the difference?
Well, what we're saying is there is no difference. People try to make it so that they can be anti-Semitic in polite society. But the IRA definition, the international definition of anti-Semitism, clearly states, which was adopted by the UN in many countries, that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And so what we're saying is that you can't say, oh, death to Israel, but I'm not an anti-Semite. If you're saying death to half the population of Jews in the world, you're an anti-Semite. If you're saying that every other country deserves to have their own state and decide their own destiny, except for the Jewish state, you're an anti-Semite. The minute you have a double standard, like we see all over the world, where other countries can do it, but not the Jews can do it, you're an anti-Semite. So anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. So that's what we're saying. Unfortunately, at the beginning, people were saying, oh, I'm not anti-Zionist and death to Israel, but we like the Jews. But now I think people understand it. You go to the same rallies, they're saying death to Jews also. They dropped the anti-Zionism, now they're just anti-Semites again because it's been popular. You know, it has been popular since, to be anti-Semitic since October 7th. You know, pro-terror, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, it's all one and the same today. And so it's unfortunate that people were hiding under anti-Zionism, but now the world sees that it's the same thing.
Why do the people don't know more about Israel and all its achievements? You stopped pulling water out of the Lake of Galilee because you were concerned for the environment. You still give Jordania what you have, right? You have a contract. You have desalinization plants. You have agri-tech, as you said. It's a desert, it's a rock, right? Israel is quite a dry country, but still you produce enough for yourselves. The population has grown, the financial centers have grown, Tel Aviv has grown, Jerusalem has grown, Haifa has grown. So you do have amicable relations with Jordanians, with Saudis. So before this terrible act of terrorism that happened from Hamas, there was a point when everybody thought that peace would be possible. What happened?
Look, peace is coming to the Middle East. There will be peace. Iran, which is the single greatest threat to democracy and freedom, was very upset because we were about to make peace with Saudi Arabia. They planned and financed the October 7th attack. They got all their proxies to attack us, hoping that we would give up. And it didn't work. And Iran's day is coming. There's not going to be Ayatollahs in Iran for much longer. I believe it, at least. There will be peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But the question you asked before is, why don't people talk about the advances of Israel? You know, we started the hydroponic systems in desert. We're the first country that the majority of its fruit and vegetables and flowers are grown in the desert. We export flowers to Holland. We beat France in wine tasting competitions. You know how crazy it is? We were a desert and a swamp.
Yeah.
We are the high-tech nation. Some of the most impressive, you know, things that came out in the 21st century, the laptop, text messaging, the cell phone, the Pentium chip, the CAT scan, drip irrigation system, desalinization. It all comes from Israel. So the question is, why aren't people more appreciative of Israel? Well, it's the same reason why people think that there's a genocide in Gaza. Because the narrative of the anti-Israel community is that we're bad guys, that it's terrible, don't go there. Why do they say that Jerusalem is dangerous? You know, if you ask someone on the street, is Jerusalem dangerous? They'll say, yeah. Jerusalem is the safest capital statistically in the world.
Yeah.
Do you know that not only are we not dangerous, we're the safest in the world. I was at a lunch 10 years ago with the mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, and Nir Barkat, who was the mayor of Jerusalem. And Rahm Emanuel was in shock. He came and he's like, look, I see the piece here in Chicago. We have 850 murders a year. And here, I see peace. Like, how many murders do you have a year? You're a smaller population, 250, 200. The mayor of Jerusalem was like in shock. He said, you know, this year, including terror attacks, and it was a bloody year for Jerusalem, we had 6. You know, a 12-year-old girl could go downtown by herself at midnight in Jerusalem and be completely fine. So the question is, why does everyone think it's so dangerous to go to Israel and to Jerusalem? Because no one wants them to see it for themselves. You can get on a plane and go to Israel, and it's perfectly clear what's going on almost immediately. You can go into any supermarket, and the people there who are shopping are Arabs and Jews. The people working there are Arabs and Jews. There's peace, there's security, there's prosperity. And the minute you're there, everyone knows that they've been lied to. And that's why they don't talk about the successes of Israel. That's why they say Israel's a dangerous place. No one wants you to see it for yourself. But our best ambassadors are people who came to Israel to visit.
Like myself, right?
Like yourself.
I went on the pilgrimage, and I also know that scores of Muslims from, West Bank and Gaza come to work to Israel every day. There are columns of people who come to Israel for work because they have to provide for their families. And they cannot do that on the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority. They have to go to Israel to work, to earn the money, to provide for their families. And they can do that, right?
Because they could before October 7th, but now they can. What happened is one of the real victims that we see is the Palestinian people. We had thousands and thousands of Palestinians, not just working, and you know, getting paid 5, 6 times the salary what they would get there. Not just, you know, free to do what they want in Israel, but we were having hundreds of children and families come to our hospitals for free. Yeah. We were taking care of them. We did a surgery on Sinwar, the head of Hamas, that saved his life because we were so magnanimous. But that ended because of the terror. The terror is the worst thing for the people of those areas. It's Hamas that's the problem. It's Hamas that is doing these things. They're doing it to their own people as well. And the useful idiots around the world say we support Hamas.
What's the solution? Because the two-state solution is now out of the question. It probably was. For Arabs, it was always. For Palestinians, it was, what, 3 times out of the question, right? Now they want it. What's the solution?
Look, since 1912, Israel's divided the land of Israel 22 times in the idea that we're going to get peace. And all we got is death and destruction. One of the victims of the October 7th is the two-state solution. There will never be a two-state solution now. It's over, dead on the table. So the question is, what is the answer? And people now are looking outside the box. One of the solutions that we're hearing is from Trump is to create an American enclave in Gaza, to allow the citizens of Gaza to leave, to not be under terror, to not be under attack, to give them prosperity, like other refugees were allowed to do throughout the ages. It's the only place in the world, by the way, another double standard for Israel, where the people who are there in the war zone are not allowed to leave by the international community. The international community won't let them leave, but Trump will. And I believe that there will be sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. It's unsustainable the way it is. And when Israel has control of the security and military areas of those areas. The Arabs will still live there. They'll still have autonomy. They'll still have their local government. But they'll have peace and prosperity. Just look at, for example, the 20% of Israelis that are Muslims. And I mentioned this before. Highest GDP in all the Middle East of Muslims. Free medical care, free education, freedom of speech, freedom of elections, freedom of the media. You know, when people look at what's happening with the Muslims in Israel, they say, hey, why don't we have that in my country? Why can't I speak out against the King of Jordan? You know, why can't I say, you know, go and protest the Sultan of Oman? We are emulated for how we treat our population. Now, I think that what's going to happen is that because there is no two-state solution anymore, we're going to have to come up with a way for sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. We're going to try to implement the plan of Trump in Gaza, and we're going to try for real peace, not this fake peace where, you know, you give half the pack of matches on the football field and then magically you have peace. It just gives more territory to attack from.
How can we help? We're small. Why do you even come to Slovenia?
I'll tell you, it's because I respect Slovenia. I don't like what's going on here. I'm saddened by it. You know, I grew up in Toronto, Canada. I moved to Israel in '99. A lot of people in Toronto, Canada were fleeing the war that was happening in Yugoslavia at the time. My friends were, and maybe your viewers won't like that, but they're from Slovenia, Montenegro, Bosnia, Croatia. We had an affinity for each other because of our past, because of what happened to us, because of the persecution that we've had. And to turn it around and make it like we're the aggressor and we're the bad guys. And it's not just the government. There are people here who actually believe that. They've been watching the media day in and day out, and they think that, you know, we're committing some sort of genocide. It's crazy. And so my message is, no, you know, join us. Work together. We have technology, we have innovation, we have powerful allies. We can support Slovenia. Just like we want Slovenia to support us, we want to support you. And any country that believes in freedom and democracy, we want in our network. We're going to launch 8 more caucuses in May. In Peru, we're launching one. In Austria, we're launching one. 6 in Africa. These are countries that say, hey, we want to stand with the only free democracy in the Middle East. Now, sometimes it's not the country saying that. It's just a small group of members of parliament, like in Slovenia. But maybe one day, it will be the government.
Josh, our time has run out. Thank you for taking our time and being my guest tonight.
Oh, it's great to be with you, and thank you for all you've done to get the truth out to the people of Slovenia.
Spoštovane gledalke in gledalci, hvala tudi za vašo pozornost. Takole tale intervju je zaključen. Upam, da ste iz njega izvedeli kaj novega. Mi pa seveda se vidimo v naslednji oddaji Intervju. Lahko noč.